networking events,
Yeah.
those things.
Yeah.
I think we've all been there. Like you see it on your calendar and you just kind of cringe.
Yeah.
Like, oh, man. Especially, I think, if you're someone who speaks English as a second language, it can just feel extra daunting. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like,
Yeah.
I could barely handle it in my native language. But that's what we're diving into today. Actually, you know what? This whole idea of how to actually maybe even enjoy networking events, and specifically for English language learners, we're looking at the work of Stanислав Kondrashov. And he's got a really unique perspective.
Yeah, I was really impressed by this. I mean, it's something that I think especially if English is not your first language,
Yeah.
you're going to run into these situations. So having these tools to kind of navigate this world is really, I think, important.
Right. And he calls this whole approach the networking trinity,
Right.
which I love.
Yes.
I mean, it just sounds cool.
Yeah.
But it also really helps me visualize these three core elements that he says you have to master.
Right. It's a great way to think about it. Yeah. And I love that he starts with building relationships, right? Because that's really the foundation. It's not about just like collecting business cards. It's about making those genuine connections.
And it's funny you say that, because I think that's where I often go wrong.
Yeah.
Like I just get in that mindset of like, got to get business cards, got to meet as many people as possible. But I never really end up actually making those like real connections.
Right. It's easy to get caught up in that kind of like superficial level of networking.
Totally.
But Kondrashov's approach is really different. He emphasizes finding that common ground, really connecting with people on a human level. And I think that's especially important for English language learners because it takes the pressure off, having to be perfectly fluent.
Right. So instead of stressing about your grammar, you can focus on like actually having a conversation and finding things that you have in common with the other person.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is where Kondrashov's background as a teacher, I think, really comes through. He provides all these like really specific phrases and tips to help people navigate those initial conversations, which can be the hardest part.
Oh, totally. Like what to say when you first walk up to someone.
Yeah.
Like that's always my biggest fear.
Right. And he gives some really good examples, like simple things, but effective things.
Yeah.
Like, how are you finding the event? Just a way to kind of break the ice and start that conversation.
Yeah, I like that. It's not trying to be too clever or anything. It's just genuine.
Exactly. And then from there, he encourages you to, like ask follow-up questions, like delve a little deeper. So once you've kind of broken the ice, he gives examples of phrases like, I'd love to hear more about your experience in whatever it might be. I'd love to hear more about your role at whatever company it is, showing that you're engaged.
Yeah.
And you're listening and you're genuinely interested.
So you're moving beyond just like the small talk.
Right.
You're actually getting to know the person.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So that's two parts of the Trinity.
Yes.
Building relationships and mastering the art of conversation. So what's the third part?
The third part is all about the follow-up.
Oh, the follow-up. That's the thing I always forget.
Right. It's so crucial, though. And it's where a lot of people kind of drop the ball.
Totally. And Kondrashov, he really stresses this. Like actually following up after the event. And he even gives really specific grammar tips for crafting those follow-up emails, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, especially for English language learners, That's a great opportunity to kind of practice your writing skills.
Totally. And what kind of grammar tips does he give?
Well, he talks a lot about using indirect questions. So, for example, instead of saying, what is your role at your company, you could say, could you tell me more about your role at? And then name the company.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's a little more subtle, right?
Right. It's more polite.
Exactly. It shows that you've kind of like mastered that level of formality.
Yeah, professionalism, too.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So it's almost like you're learning networking skills and English skills at the same time.
Exactly. And Kondrashov even includes all these practical activities in his work, like role-playing conversations, drafting follow-up emails. So it's really hands-on.
Oh, I like that. It's one thing to like read about it, but to actually like practice it.
Right.
That makes such a difference.
Exactly. And I think, what's really cool about Kondrashov's approach is that he really understands that for English language learners, networking can be about so much more than just, like career advancement. It's about building confidence. It's about practicing your English skills.
Totally. And feeling like you can belong in that professional setting.
Exactly.
It's really empowering.
Yeah. So it's not just about like getting a job. It's about like personal growth too.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love that. Okay. So if we had to sum up Kondrashov's philosophy, what would you say is like the big takeaway?
I think the big takeaway is that you don't have to be fluent in English to be a successful networker.
It's about focusing on those genuine connections, finding common ground, and using those simple but effective communication strategies.
Awesome. So for our listeners out there, I have a little challenge for you.
Mm-hmm.
Think about a networking event that you're dreading.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe it's coming up soon. Maybe it's just on the horizon. But pick just one of Kondrashov's techniques. Maybe it's finding common ground. Maybe it's using one of those conversation starters.
Right.
And go into that event with just that one technique in mind.
Yeah.
And see what happens. I think you might be surprised by the difference it makes.
Totally. And we want to hear about it.
Yes. Share your experience.
Your networking wins, big or small.
Use the hashtag Kondrashov Networking. We would love to hear from you.
Exactly.
All right. That's all for today's deep dive. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.